Well, obviously it'd be, I would love to have met her, and she's obviously, she's an inspirational woman.
Behind the glittering walls of Buckingham Palace, beyond the perfect royal image, something darker was unfolding. It began with a portrait of Princess Diana, a moment meant to honor her memory. But when Queen Camilla looked at it, instead of showing respect, she let out a laugh. And in that very moment, with everyone watching, Princess Catherine found herself caught in the middle of the storm. So what truly happened inside the palace that day? Was it Camilla's laugh, a clear insult to Diana's legacy, or was it the breaking point in a long and quiet rivalry between Kate and Camilla? The laugh that still echoes. Some stories never fade. They creep through palace halls, find their way into the headlines, and linger in whispers around dinner tables. And one of those stories is this: Queen Camilla caught laughing at a portrait of Princess Diana. It all began in the long hallway inside one of the royal residences. The kind of hallway where silence feels heavy, where every step echoes, and where history itself seems to watch you from the walls. There are portraits everywhere, paintings of kings, queens, and noble ancestors. Their eyes seem to follow you as you walk past, reminding you that you're not just in a home, you're inside centuries of power. And then, among those faces, is one more recent, one that almost glows with memory. Princess Diana, the people's princess, the woman whose beauty and compassion won the world. The woman who, even after her tragic death, still holds a place in millions of hearts. Her portrait doesn't just sit there quietly, it speaks. It reminds everyone who looks at it of love, loss, and the kind of story that feels almost too dramatic to be real. That gentle evening, Queen Camilla walked through that hall. By this time, she is no longer just the other woman. She is no longer hiding in the shadows. She is standing tall, walking beside King Charles. To get to this point, Camilla had survived years of criticism, name-calling, and endless judgment. She had gone from being painted as the villain in Diana's marriage to the woman who eventually became queen consort. For some, this was unthinkable. For others, it was destiny. But either way, here she was. And there on the wall was Diana. The whispers say Camilla paused for a moment, her eyes fixed on the portrait. Maybe a thought crossed her mind, maybe a feeling stirred, and then she laughed. Not a soft, nervous laugh, but a sharp one, louder and heavy with meaning. No one can say for sure why. There were no cameras, no microphones, only a rumor drifting like smoke through the palace halls. But that rumor alone was enough to ignite a fire. For those who believe the story, that laugh wasn't just at a portrait, it was at Diana herself. Some even imagined Camilla's unspoken thought in that moment. There you are on the wall, Diana, and here I am beside the king. I won. The speculation spread like wildfire, with people throwing out their own versions of what really happened. But others began to wonder, was it really so simple? Could it have just been nerves? Maybe Camilla felt the weight of Diana's painted eyes staring back at her and let out a quick, uneasy chuckle. Or perhaps it wasn't about Diana at all. Maybe someone nearby whispered a joke. Maybe it was pure coincidence. But rumors have their own kind of power. They don't need proof. They don't need facts. All they need is emotion. And when it came to Queen Camilla, there was already more than enough emotion to keep the whispers alive. To understand why this story cuts so deeply, you have to go back. Back to the famous words Diana once said in her tell-all interview. Those words were daggers. They painted the picture of a marriage haunted by Camilla's presence. These whispers shaped the world's view of Camilla, casting her as Diana's rival in the public eye. But before we go deeper into that, one question stands out. How did Princess Catherine react, watching the woman she admires being laughed at? Princess Catherine's reaction. When Princess Catherine noticed Queen Camilla laughing at Princess Diana's portrait, something changed inside her. Usually calm and graceful, she suddenly felt anger rise like a storm she couldn't stop. To outsiders, it might have seemed like just a picture on the wall, but for Catherine, it meant far more than that. It was William's mother. It was the grandmother her children would never meet. It was a symbol of love and loss. That day, Catherine walked into the hall. Her steps were soft, almost reverent. As always, when she saw Diana's portrait, her heart swelled. She felt connected to the woman she had never met, but whose presence was everywhere in her life. She thought of William, the boy who had walked behind his mother's coffin, his face pale with grief, the world watching, his childhood ripped away. She thought of Harry, too, only 12, clenching his fists, trying to be brave yet broken inside. She thought of Diana herself, crying alone in gilded rooms, her heart shattered by betrayal, yet still stepping outside to smile for the people. And now Camilla, the woman forever tied to Diana's pain, dared to laugh? Catherine's hands trembled, her jaw tightened. Inside her heart screamed, "How dare you? How dare you laugh at her after everything?" Catherine was known for her calmness, for her smile, for her perfect composure under pressure. But in that instant, everything changed. It was no longer about duty or royal rules. It was personal. Catherine said nothing, yet her eyes spoke louder than words. She stared straight at Camilla, steady, sharp, burning with silent fire. For a brief moment, Camilla glanced back and met that gaze. She seemed to feel its weight, uneasy under the intensity. Quickly, she looked away. The laugh faded into silence. But Catherine's anger stayed, strong as ever. Whispers of Camilla's laugh slowly found their way beyond the palace walls. Bits and pieces of the tale spread. Some believed it happened. Others brushed it off. A few even rushed to defend Camilla, saying people got it wrong. But almost no one talked about Catherine's response. Maybe because it wasn't noisy, it wasn't dramatic. And that silence is exactly what makes the memory last. But why did Princess Catherine feel it so deeply? Was it tied to something personal, or was she protecting the family name? Kate's endless admiration for Diana. From the very first time Kate Middleton heard about Prince William's mother, Princess Diana, her heart was touched. Kate was only a young girl when Diana was already known around the world as the People's Princess. She would see pictures of her in magazines, newspapers, and on television. The tall, graceful woman with kind eyes who seemed to carry both elegance and warmth wherever she went. For Kate, Diana was not just a princess in pretty dresses. She was someone real, someone who cared deeply for people. She visited hospitals, held the hands of children, and embraced those who felt forgotten by the world. Kate noticed that Diana wasn't afraid to break royal traditions if it meant showing kindness. That kind of courage and love stayed with Kate, even before she ever dreamed of marrying into the royal family. Years later, when Kate met Prince William at university, Diana was no longer alive, but her presence was still strong. William spoke about his mother with pride and pain, and Kate listened with both respect and tenderness. She knew Diana had left behind not only a legacy for the public, but also a wound in her son's heart. Kate wanted to honor the woman who had shaped William's life so much. As their relationship grew, Kate began to feel even closer to Diana, almost like she was watching over them. Every time the press compared her to Diana, Kate didn't feel annoyed. Instead, she felt humbled. She wanted to carry that same spirit of compassion that Diana had shown the world. When Kate became engaged to William, she wore Diana's sapphire and diamond engagement ring. That ring was more than jewelry. It was a piece of Diana's story, passed down to the woman William loved. Kate treasured it, not just as a symbol of her future, but as a reminder of the princess who had paved the way before her. Every time she looked at it, she felt connected to Diana's memory. As the years passed, Kate found ways to honor Diana in small, meaningful gestures. She gave her children names that carried Diana's legacy. Princess Charlotte has Diana as one of her middle names. When she and William speak to their children about their grandmother, they make sure the little ones know who she was and how much she meant to people. Kate also continued Diana's mission of compassion. She visits children in hospitals, works with charities, and supports causes close to Diana's heart, like mental health awareness. Often, when Kate kneels to speak to a child at eye level, people say, "That's exactly what Diana used to do." And Kate smiles because she knows she is carrying on a tradition of kindness. But Kate's admiration for Diana goes beyond duty. She sees her as a role model for strength, grace, and humanity. Diana faced many struggles behind palace doors, but she never stopped giving love to the people who needed it most. Kate respects that deeply. Sometimes when Kate walks into a grand hall of the palace and sees a portrait of Diana, standing tall in a gown, her gentle smile painted forever, she pauses. She doesn't see just a painting. She sees a woman who changed the royal family, who taught the world what it meant to care. She whispers in her heart, "I'll make you proud." For Kate, Diana is not just part of history. She is part of her daily life, her marriage, and her motherhood. She carries Diana's memory with quiet devotion, always making sure that the people's princess is never forgotten. From the very first moment Kate Middleton entered the royal spotlight, people couldn't help but notice something about her, something that felt familiar. According to a former royal butler who worked in the years following Princess Diana's death, Kate seemed to carry an aura that echoed the late Princess of Wales. But how could that be? Diana had died in 1997. Kate hadn't even met William until 2001, when they were just first-year students at St. Andrews. And yet, the similarities were undeniable. The way Kate spoke, soft but confident. The way she carried herself with elegance, but also warmth. And most of all, the way she made people feel seen. That was Diana's gift. And now, Kate seemed to carry that same gift, almost as if Diana had passed an invisible torch. He once said, "Everything about her, the way she interacted with people, her kindness, her beauty, she is, if I can say, the modern-day Princess Diana." And he wasn't alone in thinking that. Kate, of course, had never met Diana, but in many ways she felt as though she knew her. She had listened to William speak about his mother, watched old videos, seen the way crowds still lit up at the mere mention of her name. Diana wasn't just a royal figure. She was a force, a legend, a mother who had changed the way the monarchy connected with ordinary people. And Kate adored her for that. But here's the question. Did Kate consciously model herself after Diana, or was it simply who she was all along?
Own future. No one's going to try and, no one's trying to fill my mother's shoes, and what she did is fantastic. It's about making your own future and your own destiny. And
Diana used to make the staff laugh by poking her head out of windows and pulling funny faces. Years later, Kate did the same thing at Sandringham. Those who worked inside the palace would chuckle, whispering, "She's just like Diana." It wasn't just in private moments, it was public ones too. Kate had that same spark Diana carried, that mix of elegance and mischief, that ability to be royal and relatable at the same time. And yet what made Kate's connection to Diana even stronger was the love she shared with William. William often said his mother would have adored Kate. He saw in her the same qualities: compassion, loyalty, strength. In fact, when William gave Kate Diana's famous sapphire engagement ring, it wasn't just about tradition. It was his way of saying, "You are part of her story now." And Kate never took that lightly. She carried Diana with her in quiet, powerful ways on May 8th at Westminster Abbey. It was the 80th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day. As Kate walked beside her husband, the future king, she wore a pair of teardrop Collingwood earrings. Earrings that once belonged to Diana. To many, they were just jewels. But to those who knew, it was a silent tribute. A way of keeping Diana present, not just in memory, but in the very heart of royal life. Her admiration even showed in her relationships within the family. For years, Kate was known to be close to Prince Harry. Before the royal rift, they would go shopping together, laugh in pubs, and enjoy simple moments as friends. She also got along well with Chelsea Davy, Harry's girlfriend at the time. People who watched them said it reminded them of Diana's warmth, how she drew people in, made everyone feel comfortable, no matter who they were. Kate's admiration for Diana isn't about trying to replace her. It's about continuing what she started. Diana broke down walls between the monarchy and the public. Kate, in her own way, is doing the same. Whether it's hugging a child in a crowd, laughing with ordinary families, or showing vulnerability when the world least expects it. When people look at Princess Kate, they often see pieces of Diana. Sometimes it's in her smile, sometimes in the way she carries herself, and sometimes in the quiet grace she shows under pressure. It feels almost as if Diana's spirit walks beside her, living on through her every step. But does this resemblance bring comfort or tension? Does Kate's deep admiration for her late mother-in-law create an invisible wall between her and Queen Camilla. The silent war behind palace walls. Behind the glittering crowns, the grand balconies, and the picture-perfect photos lies a truth that is far less polished. The relationship between Princess Kate and Queen Camilla. Some call it warm. Others whisper it's fake. And then there are those who believe it's something much deeper, more complex than the public could ever imagine. Has Camilla ever truly welcomed Kate? Or has their closeness always been for show? And did Kate's devotion to her late mother-in-law drive a wedge between them from the very start? It all began long before Kate's royal wedding in 2011. It started years before, when she first stepped into royal circles. From the beginning, Camilla wasn't impressed, not at all. Christopher Anderson, a royal author known for bold revelations, once dropped a bombshell. Camilla didn't think Kate was worthy of the royal family. Strange, isn't it, coming from someone who once faced the same harsh judgments herself? For Camilla, heritage mattered. Old aristocratic bloodlines, family names written into history books, that was the standard. Kate, on the other hand, was just a middle-class girl from Berkshire. To Camilla, that made her too plain, too ordinary. She didn't see a future queen. She saw what critics labeled Kate, a commoner. Someone who, in Camilla's mind, didn't belong beside royalty. The whispers didn't stop there. It was claimed that Camilla quietly tried to keep William and Kate apart, that she feared Kate might one day outshine her, steal a legacy that Camilla had fought for. Some even say Camilla sensed Diana's spirit in Kate long before anyone else did. She isn't fit for the crown, she allegedly said. But fate didn't bend to Camilla's wishes. William and Kate married, and as the years went by, their bond only grew stronger. Fast forward to 2023. King Charles is crowned, with Camilla finally standing at his side as queen. But just before that dazzling coronation, rumors began swirling again.
Would you describe Kate and Camilla's relationship now as just a cordial relationship?
Insiders claimed Camilla wasn't thrilled about sharing the spotlight. After all, Kate had become the most admired member of the family, carrying the same grace and warmth the world once saw in Diana. Crowds adored her. Cameras followed her every move. And for Camilla, that kind of attention was dangerous. Disgusted, one insider claimed Camilla felt watching William and Kate receive endless love. Behind the palace gates, tensions buzzed like sparks. In public, however, the picture was perfect. Trooping the color, Christmas at Sandringham, glittering state banquets, Camilla and Kate appeared side by side, smiling, waving, playing their roles. But according to whispers from the palace, that wasn't the whole truth. One source claimed Camilla guarded her role fiercely, rarely handing down responsibilities to Kate. She may have been the future queen, but Camilla was the queen now. The rivalry wasn't spoken out loud, but it simmered. Quiet, tense, waiting for a moment to erupt. And yet, through it all, Kate never returned fire. She never snapped back. One insider even said, "She has never been dismissive of Camilla. She has always shown kindness." Maybe that's why, slowly, something began to change. In 2024, Kate revealed to the world she was battling cancer. The news shook the nation. And it seemed to shake Camilla too. Something inside her shifted. Perhaps she remembered her own battles with public judgment, her own scars from being hated. Suddenly, she and Kate had something in common. Both had once been outsiders. Both had been called commoners. Both had stepped into a family that demanded perfection. They knew the pressure. They knew the pain. But there was still a difference. Just like Diana before her, Kate had become the people's princess. And in her darkest hour, Camilla stepped forward anyway. They've bonded, one insider claimed. Camilla admires Kate's courage, and Kate values Camilla's honesty. For the first time, the two were described as allies. But is this truly the end of their rift? Not everyone is convinced. Even as their bond grew, whispers lingered. Whispers in the palace suggested that Camilla still felt uneasy about Kate. Some believed she feared Kate's quiet power, the way one warm smile could capture the hearts of millions. After all, Kate is the mother of the future king. She carries tomorrow in her hands, and that presence alone casts a long shadow over Camilla's crown. Was it because Camilla sometimes saw Diana's spirit living on in Kate? Or was it something deeper, something unspoken that we may never fully understand? The truth is hidden. But to truly see Camilla today, we must first ask, what was her relationship with Diana really like? The rivalry time couldn't erase. Before the world knew of the rivalry, before the whispers and the scandals, there was a very different story. Camilla Parker Bowles and Diana, Princess of Wales, were not always enemies. In fact, at the very beginning, they were on surprisingly good terms. It all began in 1980. A young Diana Spencer has just started dating Prince Charles. She's only 19, shy, inexperienced, and completely unaware of the storm her life is about to become. And standing nearby, watching quietly, is Camilla. Not as a rival, not as an outsider, but almost as a guide. Diana often visited Camilla in Andrew Parker Bowles' country home, Bolehide Manor in Wiltshire. There, she wasn't the future princess. She was just a young woman trying to find her place. And strangely enough, Camilla was welcoming. She opened her doors. She opened her world. Diana even helped Camilla with her children, Tom and Laura. Proof that in those early days, their relationship seemed almost warm. But it gets interesting. Camilla was 14 years older than Diana. She wasn't the wide-eyed girl still learning about the royal world. She was worldly, confident, and steady. For Diana, who was barely stepping into adulthood, Camilla felt like an older sister figure, someone she could trust, someone she could look to for advice. And Diana wasn't alone in thinking this way. In fact, Camilla's age made her closer to Diana's older sister, Lady Sarah McCorquodale, the same Sarah who, ironically, had also once dated Charles. Then came the Ludlow races, a moment etched in history. Charles and Diana were about to make their first public appearance as a couple. For Diana, this was terrifying. The flashing cameras, the curious eyes, the whispers of the crowd. It was a world she had never known before. But she wasn't completely alone. Camilla was right there. Witnesses recall how Camilla stayed by Diana's side that day. The two women were photographed chatting, smiling, and appearing friendly. For a young Diana, Camilla's calm, steady presence must have been a relief, almost like a shield against the chaos of the royal spotlight. Camilla even invited Diana to lunch when she first moved closer to Charles. At the time, it seemed like an act of kindness, a gesture that said, "You're welcome here." But what looked like friendship on the outside was never truly simple. Behind the polite smiles, there was tension. Behind the laughter, there were secrets. She soon realized that she wasn't just marrying a prince. She was also competing with another woman for his heart. She knew Charles's feelings for Camilla had never gone away, and that knowledge hurt her deeply. While Diana was adored by the public for her beauty and kindness, Camilla was often painted as the other woman, the rival, the one people blamed for Diana's sadness. The press made things even harder, turning their differences into a kind of battle played out in headlines. Yet the truth was more complicated. Camilla didn't vanish when Charles married Diana. They still spoke, still saw each other, and that constant presence made Diana feel trapped in a marriage where she could never be fully loved the way she hoped. In private, Diana struggled with feelings of rejection and jealousy. She often wondered if she would ever be enough for Charles, and Camilla, whether she wanted it or not, became the symbol of everything Diana felt she was missing. Despite the bitterness, there wasn't open war between them. Instead, there was silence, polite smiles in public, but behind those smiles was pain. Diana, with her natural charm, won the hearts of people everywhere. Camilla, in contrast, faced years of criticism and was seen as the reason Diana's marriage fell apart. Even today, the memory of Diana still affects how people see Camilla. For some, she will always be part of the reason Diana's marriage ended. For others, she is simply the woman Charles truly loved. The bond and the battle between Diana and Camilla will always stand out as one of the most emotional and storm-filled chapters in royal history. It was never only about two women. It was about love tangled with duty, loyalty tested by betrayal, and the unshakable weight of the crown itself. But questions still linger. Who did King Charles truly adore? Who first captured his heart? And in the end, who was the one left broken by betrayal? Meeting Camilla. It was the early 1970s. The world was changing, but in Britain the royal family still carried the weight of tradition. Prince Charles, the heir to the throne, was young, charming, but also restless. He carried with him not only the expectations of his mother, the Queen, but also the pressure of a nation waiting for its future king to find love. And then one night in 1970, at a polo match, something happened that would quietly shape the rest of his life. Camilla Shand, a woman with a sparkle in her eye and a laugh that rang out freely without fear of judgment. Unlike the carefully polished women Charles was often introduced to, Camilla was different. She wasn't shy, she wasn't rehearsed, she wasn't trying to impress him, she was simply Camilla. When they were introduced, she didn't curtsy. She didn't stumble over her words. Instead, with a mischievous grin, she is said to have leaned in and teased him. "My great-grandmother had an affair with your great-great-grandfather, King Edward VII. So what do you think about history repeating itself?" For a moment, Charles was stunned. Nobody ever spoke to him like that. But then, he laughed. And in that laugh, something shifted. As the days went by, Charles and Camilla grew closer. She knew the world of polo, of horses, of the countryside, things Charles loved deeply. But she also had something else. She understood him. Where others saw the prince, she saw the man. She listened, she teased, she comforted him when royal duty pressed too hard. He began to call her often. They would ride together, laugh together, and talk late into the night. Friends around them started to notice. The quiet prince looked lighter, happier, almost alive. Camilla wasn't from the right background. She didn't fit the mold of the perfect royal bride. She was seen as too experienced, too modern, too bold. In the eyes of the royal courtiers, she would never be accepted as queen. And Charles, though he loved her, was bound by tradition. The crown was not just about love, it was about duty, history, and image. Still, the bond was there, fiery, undeniable, unshakable. When Charles left to serve in the Navy in the early 70s, he carried her memory with him. And in his absence, Camilla's life moved forward. She married Andrew Parker Bowles, a man well connected in royal circles, while Charles, across the seas, could do nothing but swallow the loss. Yet even after her marriage, the connection between Charles and Camilla never truly broke. It lingered like a forbidden flame hidden in shadows but burning all the same. Still tied to Camilla in heart, Charles also knew what duty demanded of him as the heir to the throne, so he married Diana. But the question remains, was it a marriage born from true love, or was it simply the weight of royal duty pushing him forward? The meeting that led to marriage. Prince Charles, heir to the British throne, was living under a shadow of expectation. He had crossed into his 30s, and for a royal prince that was considered late. Whispers floated through the palace halls. The press filled their pages with questions. Courtiers exchanged uneasy glances. Even the Queen's closest advisors began to press the matter. When will Charles choose a bride? When will the future king settle down? But while the weight of duty pressed on Charles's shoulders far away in the peaceful English countryside, another story was quietly unfolding. There, in a grand old estate filled with gardens and ponies, lived a young girl named Diana Spencer. She was barely out of her teenage years, shy, playful, and untouched by the storms of royal life. At that time, she was not yet the woman who would one day capture the world's heart. She was simply Lady Diana, innocent, dreamy, and raised with the values of tradition and duty. Two very different lives, one burdened by the crown, the other still blooming in youth. Yet destiny was already moving, quietly setting their paths on a collision course that would change history forever. Charles had known Diana's family for years. In fact, his connection first came through her older sister, Lady Sarah Spencer. Charles and Sarah had once spent time together, and though their relationship never became serious, it left a link between Charles and the Spencer household. One evening in 1977 at the Spencer family estate in Althorpe, Charles came as a guest. He was 29. Diana was just 16. She was not the focus of attention. She was more like the quiet shadow, watching as the royal guest charmed the room. Diana later remembered that moment clearly. She said Charles looked quite lonely. She noticed how, for all his royal status, he seemed to carry a sadness inside him. And in her young, innocent way, she thought, I could cheer him up. Isn't it interesting? Sometimes the first spark of a great story isn't romance or passion, it's sympathy. A teenage girl wanting to bring joy to a man the whole world was watching. Charles at that time didn't see Diana as a future wife. To him, she was Sarah's little sister, sweet, cheerful, but still a child. He was focused on his royal duties, his military career, and the endless public events that filled his calendar. But fate had already opened the door. The years moved on. Charles and Diana saw each other again here and there. Each time she was a little older, a little more graceful, and a little harder to ignore. Diana's natural warmth and kindness made people around her feel lighter. And though Charles had met many women, none carried quite the same mix of innocence and sincerity. By 1980, the whispers grew louder. Charles needed a bride. Not just any bride, but someone young, noble, and most importantly, suitable to be queen one day. Diana seemed to check all the boxes. She was from an aristocratic family. She had no scandals. She was admired by many. But what about the heart? What about love? When Charles and Diana finally spent more time together, the press caught wind. Suddenly, the cameras followed her. The shy girl who once hid behind her fringe of blonde hair became the center of the world's attention. People saw her smile, her gentle voice, and her innocence, and they adored her. Charles, too, noticed her more. She was fun, she was affectionate, and she had that rare ability to make the most serious man laugh. And so, a courtship began. Still, beneath the surface, there was a question. Did Charles truly love Diana? Or was he following duty, choosing the woman who seemed right in the eyes of the world? That first meeting back at Althorpe in 1977 had seemed so simple. A teenage girl watching a prince barely noticing. Yet from that moment grew one of the most famous, most talked about royal relationships in modern history. From a quiet country estate to the grand steps of St. Paul's Cathedral in 1981, when they married before millions, their journey had started with nothing more than a glance across a room. And perhaps that is the mystery of history itself. Secrets threatening the union. Even after Charles walked down the aisle and placed a crown of duty upon his marriage, one truth remained. His bond with Camilla had never truly ended. It lingered like a forbidden flame, flickering quietly in the shadows. To the outside world it seemed extinguished, but behind palace walls it burned steady, relentless, undeniable. Camilla had been his first great love. She understood him, laughed with him, soothed him. With her, Charles felt like himself, something rare inside the golden prison of royalty. But the crown has rules. The heir to the throne could not simply follow his heart. Tradition whispered in his ear. Advisors pressed in with their opinions. And so Charles turned away from the woman who held his soul. To Diana, it was a marriage filled with hope. To the public, it was a dream come true. But for Charles, there was always a shadow. That shadow had Camilla's name. Even as he smiled beside Diana, even as the world cheered, part of him remained elsewhere, caught in the memory of laughter shared with Camilla, in the warmth of a love he could never fully let go. Although Charles tried to distance himself from Camilla after marrying Diana, some loves are too strong to vanish completely. They linger, waiting for a chance to ignite again. By the mid-80s, a quiet but powerful secret was unfolding behind the gilded walls of the British monarchy. Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles, both already married, began a relationship that would leave a lasting mark on the royal family. Their affair began again in 1986, a love that was forbidden yet impossible to deny. Meanwhile, Diana, the young, radiant Princess of Wales, was trying to navigate the pressures of royal life. She was adored by the world, yet deeply aware that her marriage was far from perfect. She even openly spoke about Camilla's place in their lives.
Well, there were three of us in this.
Yet the story wasn't simple. Diana herself had affairs, including one with James Hewitt, a former cavalry officer. Love and betrayal had woven a complex, painful web around the royal family. By the early 90s, the secret that had burned quietly between Charles and Camilla was dangerously close to being revealed. In 1993, the world got a glimpse of it through leaked transcripts of a private 1989 phone call, later dubbed Camillagate. On the tape, Camilla's voice trembled with longing as she whispered to Charles, It would be so wonderful to have just one night to set us on our way, wouldn't it? Their words were more than a confession. They were a window into a love that refused to fade, a passion that had survived years of silence and distance. By 1994, Charles faced the world himself. On television, he was asked if he had been faithful and honorable to Diana. His answer was careful, measured, yet heavy with truth. Yes, yes, until it became irretrievably broken down, us both having tried. And when asked about Camilla, he simply said, "She has been a friend for a very long time and will continue to be a friend for a very long time." In those words, the world glimpsed a bond that had endured behind closed doors, unseen by the cheering crowds and flashing cameras. The early 90s were a storm of rumors, secrets, and heartbreak. In January 1995, after years of quietly growing apart, Camilla and her husband, Andrew Parker Bowles, announced their divorce. A year later, Charles and Diana's marriage was officially over. It seemed as though fate was finally opening the door for Charles and Camilla to be together once more. Yet the story was far from finished. The world was soon shaken to its core when Princess Diana's life ended abruptly in a car crash in Paris. She was just 36 years old. Tragically, Dodi Fayed and the driver Henry Paul also died in the accident. After Diana's tragic death, the royal family took a step back. Any plans to present Charles and Camilla as a couple were quietly put on hold. The nation grieved its beloved princess, while behind the palace walls a quiet love lingered, hidden, patient, and unyielding. Could this love ever emerge into the light? Would Camilla finally find her rightful place beside Charles? Let's find out. Claiming the crown, Camilla Parker Bowles was never born a queen. Not even close. She wasn't a princess by blood, by title, or by birth. She was just a woman with her own life, her own dreams, and her own experiences. Yet somehow she made her way into one of the most exclusive families in the world, the British royal family. At first it was not easy. The world watched her every move, scrutinizing every smile, every gesture, every outfit. She had to navigate a web of gossip, judgment, and public disapproval. Slowly, she carved out a space where she could exist without being crushed. But no matter what she did, the eyes of the world never truly let her be free. Every appearance, every public duty carried the weight of her past. The turning point came quietly, almost subtly. Diana was gone. The public's attention shifted, and the bond between Charles and Camilla, which had endured decades of secrecy, whispers, and longing, grew stronger. It became more visible, more undeniable. For the first time, she could show the world that her place beside the future king was real, not a rumor, not a headline, but a truth shaped by patience, endurance, and unwavering commitment. Camilla stepped into the royal spotlight cautiously at first. She attended events, supported charities, and learned to move with the poise the monarchy demanded. The same woman who had once been mocked and scorned in newspapers now stood tall, quietly proving she belonged. And yet, even as she mastered the public stage, questions lingered. Could the past ever truly be erased? Could a lifetime of scrutiny and judgment simply be forgotten? Her rise to queen was not sudden. It was slow, deliberate, and hard-earned, not by chance, not overnight, not by magic, by patience, by strategy, by enduring every cruel headline, every whisper, every judgment flung her way by a public that had once rejected her. She claimed her place at the top with a quiet determination that few could fully understand. The sharpness in her eyes, the careful watchfulness in her demeanor is not arrogance, it is survival. It is the shadow of a life lived under constant observation, where every misstep could be magnified and every mistake remembered. It is the mark of a woman who fought tirelessly for recognition, for respect, and for a role in a family that never fully welcomed her. Some say Camilla is calculating, cold, even ruthless. But what if that measured, careful presence is her armor? Every smile for the cameras, every polite gesture at public events, every perfectly timed word, it is all part of a life she had to master. A life shaped by scrutiny, whispered rumors, and the pressure of stepping into a family that had never truly accepted her. Her story is not just about scandal, whispers, or headlines. It is about survival, about quiet battles fought far from the public eye, about patience so persistent it borders on obsession, about the ability to wait, watch, and endure until the moment finally arrives when the world can no longer deny you. Even now, as she wears the crown, questions linger in the minds of those around her, everyone navigating her presence within the royal family. From her first meetings with Charles in the early 70s, through the decades of secrecy to her eventual rise as Queen Camilla, one thing is clear: endurance has defined her life. Public scorn, personal heartbreak, and decades of uncertainty, she has survived them all. Camilla's journey is also a story of transformation. The young woman once judged for her past became a figure of strength, dignity, and influence. She learned how to move in a world where every action is dissected, every word analyzed, and every smile scrutinized. She learned to survive, to adapt, and to turn the tools of the public's judgment into weapons of her own survival. Standing beside the king today, Camilla is more than a royal consort. She is a symbol of patience, strategy, and unshakable determination. But even in her triumph, questions remain. Is she acting for the good of the monarchy? Or were the doubts, the criticisms, and the public mistrust justified all along? How does a woman reconcile the past, the controversies, and the complex emotions of decades of scrutiny with the heavy responsibility of wearing the crown?